I wanna cozy up with you, fire golden and Joni's blue. I wanna float away with you, river running to somewhere new with you.
Hi, this is Mike Jones, and welcome to episode 2 of the Cancer Cottage / Healing Hut. Today, I want to just give you some background as I prepare to build the cottage. Probably it was around the year 2020, because 2019 is when I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma and had a bone marrow transplant that summer. So it was the next year that I knew I had to do something constructive, and I decided to build my stone cottage. The first thing I did when I made that decision is I reached out to a contractor, and I found one that was very creative and accommodating to people who had sort of far out ideas. And my goal was to create a stone cottage that looks just like it had been teleported from the Highlands of Scotland. And I talked to a few contractors, and they showed me things that, were cookie cutter, paneling, fake stone, and it just wasn't it. I mean, it just wasn't it. But the guy I talked to from this one contracting company seemed very willing to work with me. So he gave me the name of an architect up near the British Columbia border, about 75 miles from here, and I went and met with him. And it was fun. Now, this guy had actually built, it was a very Dutch-rich area. I mean, a lot of Dutch people, and some of them are rich Dutch people. But one of them had actually built a replica, a stone replica, a real stone house with thatch roof based on a Dutch house that he was familiar with. And so this architect had some experience with that kind of thing, although this person I was just talking about built this so-called cottage that I would say cost at least $750,000 to build, so way out of my league. But he was willing to work with me. So the architect, I'll show you some of the drawings. Bear with me here. But he sat there and drew out on a piece of paper ideas, and then, of course, he did his drawings. Here's a site plan, and did all of our architectural drawings of the cottage, and all the engineering specifications, and then this is what we came up with, an idea of the stone cottage. So the first thing about a site plan and trying to get permits, we have to find out where water is and get water. So I'm on a community well, and that was my first assignment, was from the architect, was going to the community well and getting permission to use water. And unfortunately, they turned me down. And the reason they turned me down was their fear that I was going to build this as an Airbnb. Now, I told them I'm building it for my rehab of cancer. Give me something to do mentally and physically. But I still think they were suspicious that it was going to be an Airbnb, and they didn't want the extra traffic in the neighborhood. So then my architect said, why don't you try rainwater catchment? That was a growing thing in this area where some of the islands here, the salt water is starting to penetrate the aquifer, and they're having to find alternative ways to get drinking water. So I got the name of the most successful company in the area, based in Seattle. I worked with them for a year and doing drawings. We had to change the architectural drawings to make the roof bigger to accommodate the required space for rainwater catchment. And then when they were done, I waited on those jokers for 2 years, and they could not get an engineering stamp. And I have no clue as why. They would not return phone calls, emails. It was very frustrating. Eventually, I moved on from them, but eventually they sent me a letter that they got the engineering stamp. That was 2 years after we submitted the drawings, which was insane. But during that 2-year time, I went back to the architect again and said, we're really held up. And he said, go back to your community So I went back and I said, please, let me have water. I'm not building this Airbnb. This building this cottage is vital to my recovery or my, I have an incurable cancer, so it's not a cure, but a way of coping with my cancer mentally and physically is very important to me. And finally, they agreed to let us have water. So then the next thing that happened was the previous owner of this house had told me where they thought the water line was, a plastic water line. You couldn't, use a metal detector to find it, that ran out along the driveway. And I started digging trenches to find the water line, and I dug 5 trenches about 5 feet deep. And I'll add some photos of that if I can find it. And I could not find a water line. It was really frustrating. But then, I started thinking, I really like archaeology. I watch 2 or 3 lectures a week in archaeology and anthropology. My dad was an archaeologist and the president of the Tennessee Society of Archaeology. So I had a lot of experience with that. And in modern days, they use techniques such as satellite imaging and LIDAR. LIDAR is radar imaging of ground surface taken from airplanes. And we happen to have a LIDAR image of our property from the county. So I started studying this, and in archaeology, anytime you see a corner or even a straight line or parallel lines, that's virtually always man-made. And I found such a line that was perpendicular to the way we thought the water line went and followed it, and I mapped it out to landmarks that I could see very precisely, dug a 2 feet hole, and bingo, there was the water line. But the problem was, it was right in the center of where we wanted to put the cottage. So you can't build a cottage on top of your water line. I mean, that would be a really bad idea. So I had to go back to the architect, get a new site plan, move the cottage over 15 feet, go back to the county, get a reapplication for a permit, and finally get permits with this new location. So that all happened last March. So originally, I was going to have a contractor build this cottage, all except for the more artsy part, like beams on the interior, stonework, doors, some of those things I wanted to do. But a friend of mine started running numbers of what it would cost to have a construction company build this whole thing, and the price was through the roof. There was no way that I could afford to have a contractor come in and build everything except the little details I wanted to do. So I changed my plan and started thinking about I'd have to take on more and more and more of the work all by myself, which was frightening because I've had very little construction work, almost none. So I did decide two places I was going to have to hire someone. One was the foundation work. For a while, I was going to do the foundation work myself, and that would have been a total disaster, because I wouldn't have a clue what I was doing. So I watched an experienced professional excavator work, and he did things that I would have never thought about. But we ran into trouble. Our soil was not stable enough for a cottage, so I get civil engineers involved and bring in 14 big truckloads of dirt and pack it down before we get civil engineering approval, and then go back to the county and get approval to start pouring concrete. So on the next episode, I'm going to go through the concrete, the forming, and then we'll get into when I started putting up walls. So I'm going through this part fairly fast and catch up to where I am actually at in real time. And then from that point forward, I'll be showing you day by day, not day by day, but week by week of what my accomplishments are and the struggles I've had. But you have a good day.